My pent-up annoyance. If I begin to ramble or jump about, please pardon me. I'll try not to become distracted. My goal is to present an objective and accurate image. I want to start by saying that every girl I have ever been around has injured me. I mean, every single one, from my own mother to my cheating girlfriend and all the girls in between. While working at a Portland area restaurant 6 years ago, I had my first encounter with my current partner, Lori. I was a server, and she was the hostess. She was new to the region, having recently moved from Connecticut. Naturally, from the beginning, we were friends because we were both employed at the restaurant and belonged to the same friend circle. Allow me to take a moment to be really honest with you. I'll be the first to confess that, even though I'm far from flawless, I have made mistakes in my life. Even in this relationship, I made faults. I still want to think of myself as a good guy though. Anyway, let's get back to the narrative. When we were merely co-workers and friends, my mother was battling ovarian cancer. She sadly passed away. I have to admit that I had a hard time managing her condition even before she passed away. Despite putting on a happy front, I was hurting, even if we didn't have the healthiest relationship, and turning to sex became my coping mechanism. Finding a mate has never been difficult for me because I'm a handsome man. It served as a simple means of clearing my mind, truly experiencing a moment with someone else, and temporarily forgetting about the outside world. However, that's a tale for another occasion. I felt like I was mentally losing myself after my mother passed away, and I strongly wanted to terminate my life. I was reared by my abusive father and my stepmother after my mom abandoned us when I was about 4 years old. He quickly remarried. Even though my mother made an attempt to re-enter my life when I was a teenager, our relationship never ever recovered. Something inside of me crumbled when I lost her. I believe that I was never given the opportunity to truly forgive, find closure, and talk about the things that bothered me. I mention this to set the scene for my mental state at the moment. I turned to ladies to help me cope with my mother's passing while I was grieving. Perhaps, I suppose, I was looking for that space that she had abandoned. It was how I got to know the woman who would raise my kids. Just to be clear, this isn't the cheating girlfriend. We were engaged, but the falsehoods I told her about myself caused our relationship to break apart. I wasn't having an affair with her. But in my last-ditch effort to win her over, I had presented a false image of myself, which proved to be the cause of our failure. Let's just say that I wasn't entirely honest about my sex addiction. Anyway, I had a difficult time following the breakup of the engagement. Not only did I battle melancholy, but my living circumstances were always shifting and I had a work-related acquaintance who turned out to be dishonest. I was compelled to go from rental room to rental room, never being able to settle down. And it wasn't because I was having problems paying my rent, rather, it was due to conflict with my landlord. When the fictitious friend threatened me with a knife over a bill, it was the last straw. Actually, it was this same person who attempted to hook me up with my unfaithful girlfriend. I first refused for a variety of reasons. I wasn't very drawn to her, and I was still attempting to sort things out with my child's mother. However, Lori was at that point one of my closest pals. She had supported me consistently. She genuinely assisted me in overcoming the grief of losing my mother. And she let me to move in with her after my phony pal and ex-roommate cut me off over some silly bill. If I didn't get a ride, she stated she wouldn't tolerate my sleeping in my car. Over a few years, despite my best efforts, I was unable to mend the relationship with the mother of my children. Although I am not biologically related to either of them, I took on the role of mother to her eldest child. Even if I'm not flawless, I am aware of my goodness. Things changed, though, when I gave in and began having sexual relations with Lori. At first, I didn't feel the same way about her. I think at the moment I just needed that closeness, and I liked that she was interested in me. To be honest, even though I warned her right away that dating would sour our friendship, we did wind up together. When my ex-fiancée learned, she was also upset since I was, in a sense, pursuing her, or at the very least, making an effort to improve things. In retrospect, I wonder if it was because I had given up on happiness and accepted the circumstances that were put in front of me. The mother of my children is someone I should have tried harder to get along with. But I know in my heart that she was too good for me and didn't deserve what I did to her. I regret sleeping with Lori in retrospect, but I have to acknowledge that I was battling my own personal demons at the time and that I was unable to change the past. I want to give some background on when things started to go wrong before getting too far into the story. That was before to our formal relationship status. Lori was discreetly seeing a married coworker from her second job back when we were just friends, and I was sleeping at her apartment after the knife incident with my phony friend, and I was trying to patch things up with the mother of my child. Over time, Lori and I developed a romantic relationship during which I considered dating her. She would say things like, "I'm only staying in Portland to see where things are going between you and me," then she'd have to stop seeing the other guy. Let's name him Joe. I would constantly questioning whether she was serious about being with me. She eventually became pregnant now. She said it was by Joe, but I think it could have been me. Anyhow, she underwent an abortion. Joe returned to her flat with her female friend on the day she had the abortion. After all, her friend ended up coming into our room and cuddling with me while I screamed and sobbed in the living room on Joe's shoulder. My girlfriend was cheating on me, but we weren't really formal yet. This infuriated me because, 1, I had already told him how I felt about him, and 2nd, I had been making an effort to improve my relationship with my children's mother. We ended up hooking up for 2 or 3 hours before I left to go smoke cannabis and get a little wobbly with my closest friend at his house because it had irritated me. I ended up taking her pal home. After several months, Lori and I shared a new basement suite. Her previous roommate was problematic, and finding a new home to live in Portland was challenging due to the high cost of living. One evening, I returned to the basement suite from an unremarkable stint working at the restaurant. But then I realized I had left my key inside, so I rapped on the door. There was no answer, but I could hear sounds from inside. Before she arrived at the door wearing my band tee and a tiny pair of black underwear, I had been banging on the door for at least 20 minutes. I told her I didn't want that married guy around, so I wasn't really surprised to find him in our suite. It seemed like they had been working hard, since he had a crimson complexion and was sweating profusely. He must have hurried to put his clothes back on. She was playing him one of the vinyl songs she had recently purchased, so it seems that they were not aware of my presence at the door. Yes, BS. When I knocked on the door, the only music playing in the suite was the sweet song of her betraying heart. This was the last straw. Is there any way I could ever trust this woman? I told her I heard everything they were doing from outside and I knew exactly what they were doing. Well, that last bit was a lie after I spent the entire day banging my balls at the restaurant, but I wanted to hurt her even more than she already had. I said, "My girlfriend is standing in front of me with nothing but a t-shirt and panties. And she's been alone with you in there for however long, and apparently you've already knocked her up once. I'm having a hard time believing that nothing happened in there between the two of you. Get lost." And he scurried out of there, despite his attempts to tell me that nothing had happened. Love is strange. Honestly, it sneaked up on me with her. I know what you're thinking. Well, you weren't really into her anyways at the start. She ended up taking up space in my heart that felt warm and possibly like what I had been missing my entire life. Before, I had only thought of her as a friend, and maybe someone with whom I could occasionally get my rocks off. I sensed a weakening of my shell, as if she was tending to a portion of me that needed healing. However, once I saw her and him together, she kept trying to persuade me that their relationship was really over, but I just couldn't bring myself to believe her. This was a huge red flag for me since every time I broached the subject of stopping their connection, she would argue that, "You can't control who I'm friends with." I believe that there is always going to be an underlying desire between men and women, even if they have a history of intimate relationships. Men and women cannot just be friends. I stayed in spite of this, and as time went on, I discovered that I was always changing jobs. I needed a more secure employment because I had 2 small children from my previous relationship to take care of and I wasn't making the money I wanted at the restaurant. In addition, there was so much drama among my friends in the restaurant that, after a while, I just wanted to go. For then, my ex-fiancée was getting married to someone else, but Lori helped me acquire a position at the same company she was employed for. Indeed, I felt that I had let my ex-fiancée down by not trying hard enough with her, so maybe it was just my ego talking, but I tried to work things out with her. In any case, she helped me land this position at this elite private school where Joe Schmo also works. Fortunately, at first, we were in different departments, so I didn't mind too much as long as he avoided me and Lori. If that were okay with me. The money offered was too wonderful to refuse. By the conclusion of my first year at the new work, I felt like things were improving. They moved me to a new building, and sure enough, Joe Schmo is now my immediate supervisor. Fantastic. He offered me a job right away that would have required me to work 6 hours a day rather than 8, but the pay would have been the same. I agreed without noticing his hidden agenda since I wanted to spend more time with my children and knew I had to take care of them. He wouldn't have to work them himself if he gave me additional hours. Since he hadn't caused any trouble after I told him to scram, I didn't consider this as a warning sign at the time. I will also add that I was reluctant to part from Lori because I saw her as a source of stability, and I didn't want to experience homelessness for my children once more. I wasn't going to do it again because I had already done it. I believed that Lori was assisting me in being the better person I needed to be for my kids. I eventually began to believe that things were improving. Lori had shown me so much love and hadn't brought up Joe Schmo or anything of the sort. I'll even admit that I looked at her phone a few times, expecting to find something, but it was spotless. Oh, how wrong I was, though. My neighbor once inquired as to whether I had any other roommates. I didn't. He mentioned that another guy had been dropping by, and based on the description, I recognized Joe Schmo right away. I appreciate my neighbor and ask him to keep everything under wraps and let me know if he notices anything else unusual. I attempted to act normal around her and Joe, my supervisor, and didn't say anything. I wanted to make sure I had a place to stay so I could watch my kids and have them over without becoming homeless again. And I also needed to get my act together before moving because, number one, I was making decent money and needed the money for my kids. Ever since the episode with my false friend, I've been terrified of this. All I had to do was make sure I was acting like the mature parent my kids deserved. Here, I couldn't act hastily. I began keeping a closer eye on Lori and noticed small changes that at first I didn't immediately interpret as warning signs. She moved to another room to answer calls, carried her phone with her everywhere, and even used it in the restroom. Lori tells me she's heading out for drinks with a few of her girlfriends a few nights later. Though I have a sneaking hunch she's meeting up with Schmo later that night, I do my best to hide my dismay and wish her a happy time. While walking my dog, I noticed a familiar SUV parked a short distance from our house. It's the same SUV that Joyo parks in the work parking lot. About 15 to 20 feet in front of the car's bright headlights, as I approached, I saw some persons moving around inside. It appears that they are sharing a kiss inside, even with the lack of light and my impaired vision. I crossed the road again slowly so I may have a better look. They have obviously observed me and sensed my rage. When I go home, I grab my phone and blow up her phone right away. She answers, unexpectedly annoyed, telling me I'm overreacting. Her companion was just dropping her off, she tells me. She's trying to manipulate me by gaslighting me and making me question how I see things. With the headlights blazing, I couldn't be 100% sure what I saw, but I knew in my heart that I wasn't mistaken. I believed my gut. During the weeks, my next-door neighbor, who also shares the drive, informed me that he had installed security cameras in his window facing my front door and another facing the street from his neighbor's house next door. Considering how frequently he assists the elderly man with other tasks, this wasn't too hard for him. He said he understood how I felt because his ex-wife had cheated on him. It took him several weeks to eventually reach his breaking point and decide to reveal me the proof he had gathered. He pulled up the proof as we were smoking and chatting in his carport. We're friends and spend a lot of time together, so even though I don't want to get involved in other people's personal affairs, I can't ignore this any longer. It turns out that my boss Joe Schmo has been visiting my house while I'm still at work virtually every weekend since I have my kids every other weekend. Since he creates my schedule, he leaves before I finish my shift and returns later if I need to go again. Behind closed doors, they spend hours walking my dog and doing who knows what. I'm furious right now. I get copies of the videos from him. I haven't told Lori that, but by now I've found an apartment that's actually closer to my kids and my ex-fiancée. I have also had a conversation with the spouse of my former partner, who is employed at a posh security firm. He has extended an offer to me for a position that would allow me to continue seeing my children. I'm overjoyed for my ex and her spouse, and he's a really kind guy. Even with everything, they've been incredibly supportive of me. Thus, despite Lori cheating on me, I feel very happy about where I am right now. I take a sick day, load up my belongings, and begin the process of relocating to my new apartment. One of my friends is helping me out. Next, I spend some time composing an email to my director, who is essentially Joe Schmo's supervisor, informing him of Schmo and Lori's connection and inflating the number of hours on his timesheet. I receive a reply right away, expressing gratitude for the information I provided. When Lori gets home from work, she obviously doesn't know about the bomb I set at work, but she still asks me what's going on when she notices that my belongings are gone. I break the news to her. She's in shock, gawking around the deserted flat. Her eyes swiftly change from ones of shock and perplexity to ones of anger. She presses me to tell her what went wrong and why I'm leaving, but I remain calm and speak in a steady tone. I inform her that I am aware of her liaison with Joe Schmo. Her eyes widen as she realizes she's been caught, and her face turns pale. She initially tries to deny it, but she changes her tale when I bring up particulars that only someone who had seen the surveillance film would be aware of, knowing she's been caught. She claims that although she messed up, she did not act as badly as I did. She tried to suggest I cheated on her with my ex-fiancé, but I said, "What did I do? I didn't get physical with anyone. I never cheated on her." I say she knowingly continued seeing Joe Schmo even after we started dating and didn't even know if it was his baby or mine when she had the abortion. Don't even start that. We weren't even dating. I informed her that I was done with her and her BS and that I was going to leave. I gathered the remaining bags I had. My friend and my dog strolled out the door together. I went into work the following day and handed in my resignation. Fortunately, I got along well with the director, and considering the situation, he didn't make me stay for the full 2 weeks. Update: my director sent me an email just now. I try not to cry, but deep down, I'm happy about this little win. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We've conducted an investigation, and your claims have been substantiated. Joe Schmo has been terminated effective immediately. The right has been done. I've been working at this new business for a short while now, and everything is good. Then it says, as for Lori, she has been terminated effective immediately. We believe it's best for all parties to move on from this situation. In addition, I've been spending a lot of time with my kids, and my ex and I have grown close. I'm feeling well. I'm content. Whoa. This story is very epic. A certain amount of self-awareness is required to acknowledge your blunders in the middle of the confusion. Who hasn't battled inner demons or made dubious choices in the name of happiness, after all? And then there's Lori, the buddy-turned-enemy, the hostess-turned-heartbreaker. She stuck with him through good times and bad, but it seems that the fine line between betrayal and friendship was too hard to ignore. Lori, the femme fatale, oh dear. She seems like out of a noir movie, enticing gullible people with her allure before dragging them beneath the rug. Hey, at least she finally got her retribution, isn't that right? When you play fast and loose with other people's hearts, karma has a strange way of catching up with you. Although, to be honest, you gave her far too many opportunities to make amends. And Jojo, what a character, creeping into our hearts and offices like a snake in the grass. As his quick dismissal shows, however, not even the most cunning of operators can avoid the long reach of justice. Lori, and Jojo's story was the most miserable story ever. How do you interpret this? In Op's position, what would you have done differently? We appreciate your participation and want you to share your ideas in the comments section below.